Stop. Talk to me. Hi, Grant.
Hi, Crystal.
How's your day going?
It is great. It's particularly great because I just got to speak to one of our grantees, Claudia Rodriguez-Biezunski, who is a textile artist and really an amazing individual.
Yes, I have been to the Sew Loka workshop, and I was so nervous, but she made it fun and warm. So I'm excited for this interview today.
And we should point out that we have a visual component
Yes.
to this interview, which I hope folks will check out on the website because we show some of Claudia's artwork, and it really is exceptional. And I've had the opportunity since this interview to talk to other folks in the community about her work. She is a real San Diego artist.
Oh, yeah. And the culture is rich and vibrant. So I think maybe on this one as well, we should just jump in
Let's
and
go
enjoy
to
it.
Claudia, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for
this
having
is,
me.
Your energy is infectious. But I have to confess, I feel like the least qualified person ever to do this interview because what you do is so cool.
Thank you.
And in a world that I just don't dwell in at all.
Yeah, that's okay.
So actually, let's start by looking at a little bit at your artwork and
Yes.
your medium. You are a textile artist.
Yes.
And why don't you just share with us what that looks like?
Yes. Should we bring out some pieces?
If you would.
Yeah,
You've got some pieces here.
I
And
do.
this is a chance. Those of you who know what this is can view it as Claudia educating me, but I just think this is fun to look at.
Yes. So this is a jacket that was commissioned by the Wave, which is the women's soccer team here in San Diego. And it's made out of 3 jerseys and 2 jerseys and 3 sweaters. And it's all patchwork. And then we layered it with all kinds of different patches. And so we wanted to integrate like Latino fabrics, like the otomi patches. And I love just adding a lot of different types of elements. And so we did all the patches, and then the back of it.
This is extraordinary, by the way.
Thank
It's beautiful.
you. The back is, we did the crest, and it's leather, and then we use T-shirts and sweaters. And we really wanted to celebrate that Latino influence by adding Vamos Wave, which is like basically cheering on the team. And it was a lot of fun. And, I feel like I really get really deep into it and have a lot of fun with it and cut it and sew it. And so this is a start to finish creation. And so what that means is that I cut everything up and then sew it together and then build the whole entire jacket from start to finish.
So it's not like you're putting patches on an existing jacket. You're actually rebuilding the whole jacket.
The whole thing.
Okay.
Yeah,
All
which
right.
is a lot of fun. And so this is our Wave jacket. And then this guy right here, he's part of a collection. It's called Mi Sueño Loka, which is basically dreams and ambitions. And so this was my dad's dream. He was a denim distributor, and so
Your father was.
My dad was.
Wow.
Yeah,
Wow.
he's still alive, but he's not doing denim anymore. And that's where I got like all my skills and. I feel like worth ethic, and I felt like he kind of bred me to be an entrepreneur. So this has a lot of storytelling that is my dad's dream. And he was a denim distributor, and denim is one of the most toxic pollutants. And so I feel like I'm having to clean up my dad's mess with with denim. So this is another one. And then this.
And is this reclaimed denim?
Yes. So this piece right here, it's made out of, there's about 3 pairs of jeans.
Yeah.
And so we just added every element. And so I really like adding what I call the fingerprint of denim, which you see like the discoloration and like the hemming and
Right.
all that kind of stuff, just to give it like a little bit more detail and more dimension to the piece.
And when you say it's one of the most toxic of fabrics,
Yes.
Say more about that because
So
I didn't know that.
it takes 1,800 gallons of water to produce one pair of pants. And so that is a lot of water. And considering that in California, we do have a lot of droughts, it's good to understand what are the products that we're buying and what are the impacts on our climate change. And denim is one of those really harsh pollutants. And so for me, understanding why denim was created, which was for the working class, and the way that the weave was made was meant to hide those stains for people that were working and all that. And so for me, understanding that it was like such a strong textile, I really want to utilize it to create more cool things once its life ends.
So part of your art
Yes.
is not only reinventing these existing jackets or what have you, but there's a narrative behind the material. Is that right?
Yes. With everything, there's storytelling involved with all of them. I really like storytelling through it and explaining like why we use specific textiles. Sometimes it's for purposes of like giving you like warmth and comfort and all that kind of stuff, which I guess really we jump into this one. And so this is a
Boy,
piece.
that's beautiful.
Thank you. It is what I call a leather mosaic. And so it's basically layered pieces of leather. They're tiny pieces that are cut out, and then we do a layering effect, and then we sew it all together. And so this was at the Menge at their Nietzsche outside display, and it was a lot of fun. And I really feel like the Virgen de Guadalupe holds a lot of like feminist energy, and she really reminds me a lot about my grandma. And so an image like this is very like, there's a lot of cultural representation, but also a lot of like elements of like my grandma and that warmth and that faith and, you know, just like a really, you know, good feeling. And I just love a lot of colors. So when you do come and visit the studio, you'll see like an explosion of color everywhere. So this was definitely something where I'm like, just keep adding all the colors into it. So this is beautiful.
And did this start off as existing fabrics at all? Or?
Yes. So this was, we had the pink fabric. We had a lot of it. And so we really felt that that color pink was really going to be like an eye-catching pink. And so we built the whole entire jacket. We had a lot of these ribbons and really fun, like tassel kind of fringe here. And so we're like, let's just keep adding some stuff and, you know, we'll see what happens. And so this one is also part of Mi Sueño Loka, and it's basically, I did this self-portrait, and that's actually me when I was like 16, and it was like one of the hardest years of my life, I feel. I was an at-risk youth, and so this year I had gotten kicked out of high school, and I was having a really difficult time trying to cope with like I guess like my family falling apart. And so when I look back at this picture, like there's a little bit of sadness in my eyes because, you know, you're just kind of like a lost teen. And I think as like a teen, sometimes you feel like you have it all worked out and that
or
parents,
not,
and that your parents don't understand you.
Right.
And so I basically used a lot of recycled pieces for like the face and kind of did a free motion to sketch out like the detailings of like the eyes and the face. And I had Liberty spikes back then, which was a lot of fun. But like I said, I love denim. And so this is all black denim. And I really wanted to add all those like punk elements of me when I was like a teen, and just really wanted to go overboard.
So you've got safety pins and sewing is not dead. Were you making a statement there?
Yes. And sewing is not dead. And I feel like it's very much alive. We're wearing it every single day with our clothes, with the upholstery in the room, with the upholstery in our cars, with our shoes. Like it's all over.
All around us.
All around us. Yeah. And I feel like a lot of the times we just don't really like appreciate those kind of things. Yeah. And so it's really good to create that t-shirt that says sewing is not dead.
I like this. No snitches, just stitches.
Yeah, just only stitches.
Thank you so much for sharing all of that with us.
You.
That felt like my morning news segment.
Yeah.
It was fun to get to see the work you do, and I think it will help everybody understand a little bit more of what you and Sew Loka are about.
Yeah.
So let's start by talking. You began to address this. I mean, you're in sharing with us about your father and his work in the denim industry, and you and your fascination with sewing. But how did your family shape the path that you took in terms of being an artist, an entrepreneur, and in fashion?
I feel like my dad, now looking back, I felt like he really did breed me to be an entrepreneur. When I was like 12, he closed down the factory and he moved everything into the garage. And I was just watching him in there all the time. And, he was making, fleece jackets and selling them at the swap meet. And my dad was always that kind of person that he wanted to give people a deal. So it was like 2 jackets for $30 or 1 for 20, and so he was all about the deals. And I remember, on Fridays was our production day. So the whole family would go in there. We would make the stuff. And then on Saturday and Sunday, he would drop me off and my siblings to sell the clothes. And I just remember.
So you were part of this enterprise.
I was part of the.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah, I was one of the sales executives.
Okay. I love that.
And so it was, I feel like at the time it was a little embarrassing. No one wants to be a 12-year-old selling at the swap meet when it wasn't the cool thing to do.
Of course.
And I do feel like my dad really wanted to set me up to be self-sufficient, to not have to depend on having to have like any kind of like job, or to be able to move around freely and to have like a skill. And I feel like my dad was a very hardworking man that really wanted to give us those resources for us not to have to depend on anyone. And I feel like he really did a really good job doing that.
So when you started thinking about what you are in terms of the career you were going, entrepreneur was obviously part of it, but I'm curious how you came to the self-identity around textile artist, because you could have said fashion designer.
Yes.
You could have said, I'm a clothes maker. How did you arrive at shaping yourself that way?
It was really difficult, to be honest, because I felt like it was really difficult for me to just claim myself to be an artist. I've always been like a creative, and all my teachers ever since I was like in first grade would always like, tell my mom, "Oh my gosh, she's so creative. She's so like, and my mom would be like, "Okay, she didn't value creativity as like a life skill or any of that kind of stuff." And so for me, especially being like a brown woman and brown business owner, I felt like when people see a sewing machine, they usually just feel like we're there to service someone and that we're there to fix clothes and do all that kind of stuff. And so I was getting a lot of those kind of, people that were like, tailor my clothes and do all that kind of stuff. And I really wanted to elevate myself, to push myself out of those limits and to create pieces that were going to be able to tell stories and would change the narrative of how we're viewing clothes. And so for me, I really wanted to step out of that feeling of my parents sewing to survive. And I wanted to step into that space as I want to take sewing as a way of expression and storytelling and changing like these things that we see clothes as just like, throwaway. And so I really wanted to change that narrative through it. So becoming a textile artist, I felt like that was really going to help kind of like change what people could view me as and how I was going to create like these really cool pieces.
Yeah. I wonder if there's so many different questions I want to ask you based off of that. And I love the fact that you view yourself or viewed yourself as maybe helping people to reinvent how they view an entire category of things that we take for granted in everyday life, which is clothing.
Yes.
So you truly are an artist, because only artists think that way.
Yeah, thank you.
But I'm curious. Do you ever encounter sort of pushback from more traditional artists or people who look at the more traditional arts and say what you're doing isn't art?
Yes.
And what's your rejoinder?
I feel like like I said, I've always been creative, and my realm of expression has always been like creating clothes, and especially creating pieces that like the ones that I just showed you.
Yeah.
And for me, like I never was like invited to be part of like any kind of like art show or things
Right.
like that. And so it hurt my ego a little bit. So I was like, well, you know what they say, if you're not invited to the table, you should build your own table.
I love
So
it.
I started basically wanting to host my own art shows and really bringing in friends that maybe they weren't, I guess, viewed as they were newer artists that maybe they weren't being invited as well. And
Right.
so creating like a table for all of us to be able to sit down and showcase our work. And for me, I have always felt like if there isn't an opportunity out there for you, you make your own opportunity.
I admire that so much. So,
Thank you.
Is that where the idea for Sew Loka came from? And tell us a little bit about this dream,
the crazy journey.
Yeah. And I mean, what it is, and how it came about for you.
So I feel like it really started my last job. I was a receptionist for a physical therapy place out in LA. I'm originally from LA. And I remember I was sitting with like a girlfriend, and she was celebrating 10 years of being at this place. And I just kind of remember thinking like, I don't think I could be here for 10 years. Which it was the best job that I ever had.
Yeah.
And they accommodated every creative thing I wanted to do.
Right.
And, which was great. But I just couldn't see myself being there or growing in a career there or any of that kind of stuff. And so I started to think, how can I be successful in life if I didn't go to college? And so I didn't go to college. It was just a very intimidating process for me. Both of my parents don't speak English. And so I didn't understand how to get to that point of everything that was the college experience. And so I didn't end up going to college. I actually went to a trade school. And I just remember thinking like, if I wanted to be successful, I should start my own business. And I laugh about it because my dad made it look so easy. He just made the stuff, he went and sold it, and it was like money in his pocket every single day, and he supported the family with it. And so I just kind of felt like it was going to be that easy, that I was just going to open up a business and then everyone was going to just go there.
Right.
And it wasn't that. It was actually, it's been a really long road, and it's been a very interesting road, and it's been a lot of learning experiences. And I feel like part of that experience was really like getting to know me as like myself, but also how do we create something where it's not just solely based on our business? How do we create like a model where we could have people come in here and also understand like the impacts of like clothing and like how much clothes we have and like why textile waste is number 2 pollutant. And so really giving like a space to inspire people to look at clothes as like something more than just throwaway and like something other than just like it's the season right now for this. And so really wanting to create these workshops that really teach people how to be more sustainable within their own clothes, but also just inspiring them to also take that leap of faith of becoming a textile artist. And what would that look like? And so the journey has been a lot of fun. We've met a lot of really cool people. We've done a lot of really cool things, and just grateful that like people have understood the journey. And
and do you
which is awesome.
describe Sew Loka as is it a shop? Is it a collective? Is it an approach?
So I feel like it is like a shop where it's very like community driven. We want people to come in, and we want you to like walk all the way to the back, even check out our bathroom. There's art in there too, And so we want for you to feel like this is like a safe space for everyone to come and create. And the feeling that people like have when they create or when they fix something is so contagious, and they become so proud of themselves. And it's proven that like when you add a little bit of like customization to one of your items, or you fix it, that you're more likely to keep it for longer. And we want that. We want for people to keep their clothes for longer.
So one of the things I've learned in the I know just enough to be dangerous on this, so you correct me, please. But through the whole current tariff debate, I learned a lot about fast fashion and
Yes.
the fact that we are living in this world now where, based on the frequency of views on Instagram, factories in China will churn out a whole new line of clothing that will be in stores in the U.S. or available online, I guess.
Yes.
Almost overnight.
Yep.
And these global supply chains and the clothes are obsolete within a season.
Yep.
But they're so cheap that they are throwaway items anyway.
Yes.
What you just shared with us is kind of the antithesis of that.
Yes.
I mean, I know you have an Instagram following, so I know that it may overlap in that respect, but it's slower. It's artistic. It involves the remaking of things and reuse of things. Why is that? I mean, you're sort of defying time and tide and history in terms of doing that. Why did you choose to lean into that? Why do you think it's important? What are you hoping to convey to people?
I got into, I guess what you would say, like the sustainable route. And I didn't even know it was a sustainable route because I was like a teenager, but I got into it out of necessity. And so I'm one of 6 kids. And so we didn't go back to school shopping. I think the most we did is like we got new shoes for the school year. And so I always really wanted to have cool punk rock clothes. But my parents weren't going to buy me the cool.
They weren't going to take you to.
Yeah, they weren't going to. Yeah, they thought that was like a little too crazy of a store for them. And so I did have the proper tools to cut things up and to sew them together. So DIY punk is like a huge scene and I loved it. And so I was in my room and my first sewing machine was an industrial sewing machine that my dad gave me. And I was just in there sewing up stuff and cutting it and making cool outfits for the next day at school. And I felt like, it was mainly out of necessity. That's how I grew. But I love where this change is coming. Like the slow fashion is really making like a move into how we're viewing clothes, right? In France, just recently, they started banning influencers from sharing content that supports fast fashion, which is really awesome. And I think that that's like a great step in basically cutting down all of that mass production of goods that are just going to end up in a landfill. And I feel like for me, being able to sit there and like work on a piece for hours and hours is so meditative for me. And I feel like I've been in this space where someone wore something similar to what I was wearing, and I just kind of felt like they're comparing us and they're saying like who wore it better, who looks better in that. Right. And I feel like with the pieces that I make, I really try to make sure that it's uniquely for one person. And so everything's one of one. And I feel like that does create like a sense of like being proud of what you're wearing, as opposed to something where you're like, this is just going to last me like one day. And the frequency in like these fabrics that are being created, because they're all plastic. And so they're not good for you. And so for me, like I really like using natural fabrics or the things that we do source that are, are given to us where they want something created from it. We do want to make sure that we're using fabrics that are going to last a really long time. As opposed to it just being like something throwaway. So
if somebody walks in with some fabrics that they want to redo and you look at them and say, those are not good for you, you will tell them.
I do, yeah. I'm really honest about that kind of stuff.
So I'm curious how you describe your style. How do you describe your style?
I feel like I'm very much inspired by like DIY punk fashion. And so like I showed you that jacket, I had Liberty Spikes when I was like 16 and, just experimented with a lot of, hair dye and just did like all the fun, punk shows and all that kind of stuff. So that is like a big influence into the clothes that I make. You see a lot of patchworking, all that kind of stuff. But I also feel like there's a lot of like bold colors, and I feel like culture plays like a huge part in, design. And I feel like color is whenever I look at a lot of colors, it just makes me feel really happy. Like there's like this feeling in my heart where I'm like, wow, that makes me feel so happy. And so I do like playing with patterns that maybe shouldn't go together. And I like forcing them to go together. So I like playing with a lot of different patterns and shapes and, all that kind of stuff. And I like mix matching things. And, I'm very playful when it comes to like design. And I feel like I kind of design with like a youthful heart. And I just really enjoy it. I enjoy just putting things together and hoping for the best.
Well, I mean, your joy around the work comes across. Your storefront is in Barrio Logan.
Yes.
And I'm curious, is there a typical customer who walks through your door?
You know what? We have such a wide range of customers. We have people that have PhDs. We have teenagers that come in. We have grandmothers. We have moms. We have.
So it doesn't kill your vibe when a grandmother or grandfather starts wearing your.
No, we love it. And I feel like we definitely want to make everyone feel like it's for them, because every piece is uniquely made. Like one of one. So we really want for people to feel like they're getting like almost like a wearable art piece. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, looking at those, that's how each of them comes across.
Thank you.
You showed us one that was from the San Diego Wave Football Club. And more recently, I understand you've begun working as well with San Diego FC, the men's club. How does that happen? I mean, how does somebody who's sort of taking this artistic reuse approach suddenly become, this may be a strong term, but the darling of the the soccer scene in San Diego?
Well, it was really interesting because when I got approached, I was like, oh, cool. They want to commission me for like a couple of pieces. So I did 6 pieces for them that were auctioned off. And I was just kind of like, sure, whatever you need. I'm very like easygoing, love challenges in my work. I love creating things that like I've never done. So I did 2 soccer balls for them, 2 duffel bags, and 2 jackets. And one of the most beautiful things that had happened in that conversation is that they understood the way that I work. In the sense of they understood that I was a textile artist that mainly worked with recycled, repurposed, and reclaimed fabrics. And they did not want to change that. They were all about that. And for me, like, I was like, wow, usually when you work with big corporations, they're like,
mass production.
We want this. And, these, we want new. And, and so for me, they were like, no, we love what you're doing with this. Like, we really want you to lean in on that. And I was like, whoa. And so I've just had like such a fun experience working with them. We actually created 200 pieces for them. For their merch of the match. And they all completely sold out before, I guess like the game even started, which was really, really cool. And so I'm just so grateful that they saw the potential in working with a local artist that is going to take maybe their damaged goods and recreate it into something more unique and like more of a collector's item, especially in like a sports realm. I feel like those are huge pieces.
Yeah. That's amazing that it sold out even before. That's fantastic. Let's talk for a moment about the practice of the art, because I'm curious about that too. You describe it, you actually used this language a moment ago, but you talk about doing this work in a way that calms your mind and it feels very meditative. Tell us about that, what it's like to be an artist in this space, because I would, again, think of fashion as high pressure and, you've got to meet your deadline.
Yes.
So why is this meditative and calming?
So sewing is very repetitive. Like the act of sewing, like when you're sitting there and when you're sewing, the construction and all that kind of stuff, it takes a little bit more brain power. But when you're sitting there, the way the machine kind of like hums and that kind of like, sound, it just makes like this really nice meditative sound.
Becomes
And
your
then
zone.
it becomes a zone.
Yeah.
And you just kind of get lost in like that,
Yeah.
that like feeling. And it's really, I had to get like a huge clock that tells you what time it is because I was just losing time there. And I would look up at the clock and it was like 2 hours later, and you're just lost in like this, this playground of like fabric. And especially when you're seeing your vision come to life and you're like, it becomes like very like you're like, oh my God, it's coming to life. I can't stop now, So it is proven that when you sew, your heart rate actually goes down a little bit.
Is that right?
Which is really cool. And so I feel like sewing is in the moment therapy. It allows for you to slow down. You have to be ready for you to get into your own head because it is so meditative that whatever thoughts are happening in your head, you're just going to keep thinking about them and thinking about them. So if you don't want to self-reflect, it's probably not the hobby for you. But it is it's very meditative. And if you are working on a project that's not too overwhelming for you, it will give you that effect. If you're working on a project that's way too overwhelming for you, it will feel like there's a deadline, there's this, there's that. But enjoying every part of the process, from the ironing to the cutting to the mistakes as part of the process, really allows for you to enjoy it as opposed to like having to rush through it.
So what have you, because you teach this as
Yeah.
well, right?
Yeah.
And you help others sort of learn the craft. What transformations have you seen come over people as they've started trying to tap into that?
Well, I teach at Arts, A Reason to Survive in National City. And I love that program because I would have loved it when I was like a teen. And we have like a sewing, like I guess a workshop that runs for about 10 to 12 weeks. And these past 2 classes that we had, we've just seen a lot of teens that what they're doing is that they're upcycling and recycling clothes that they find at thrift stores and now creating their own like shops based around those kind of things. And so giving them these skills to be able to repair clothes that they find at thrift stores, or, upcycling them into something like cooler, like a skirt or things like that. It really allows for them to get into becoming like young entrepreneurs. And so we're seeing a lot of that. We're seeing a lot of parents that they're seeing their kids that are so interested in sewing that they're now buying their kids sewing machines, which is like a really interesting place to be because you're
Back
like,
to the Future.
Exactly. You're like, what year is this?
Right.
So it's
Right.
it's been such an amazing experience. Just seeing people get really inspired and wanting to see that validation from themselves as opposed to other people having to validate how good they're doing is such a powerful step. And you're just seeing a lot of people make really cool stuff or just being self-sufficient in repairing their own clothes.
Do you see a shift actually beginning to happen?
I do.
So say more about that.
I feel like more people are wanting to do what they're considered grandma crafts. So like crocheting, knitting, sewing, gardening, things like that. And we're seeing a lot more of those kind of things because they're more calming. Like sewing is, I feel like all these like skills, right? They're all skills. And like there was home ec, I think I was like one of the last grades in my school that was still offering home ec. So I took sewing in high school. But we don't have that anymore. And so it's really important for us to be able to fix our own things, right? Like, let's say that you have a button that falls off your shirt. You should be able to fix those things. And you should know how to do it. So like that, if you don't want to do it, you're going to appreciate the person that can do it for you.
Right.
And that you're going to, not feel like, wow, that's so expensive because you can't do it, And so we're seeing a lot of that huge shift in things that were considered like things that your grandma would have taught you. And so we're seeing that come back now with the younger generation.
I had not heard that phrase before, grandma crafts, but I totally would understand it. Yeah. Sew Loka, maybe connected to that, has evolved into kind of a community hub in
Yes.
Barrio Logan.
Yes.
Was that part of the vision originally, or was that just sort of an accidental byproduct of being there and being you and having this idea that you wanted to share with others?
Yeah, I think it was like mainly accidental, but also at the same time, I feel like as a brown woman, we're always kind of like taught to be of service and how can I help you? And, you know, I've always loved people and I enjoy people and I love welcoming them into my space. And for me, like, you know, when people come in, I'm like, oh my God, we got new friends. And so I get really excited about that. And so I started noticing a lot of people were like yearning for connection. In the way where maybe it was like as adults, like difficult to make friends. And so we started doing workshops and we just, you know, open up the studio and people come in and they meet other people that are into similar things. And so, you know, creating like that kind of connection with each other is really important. I feel like communities should be like self-sustainable and should rely on like their neighbors, things like that. Because that's how I grew up. I grew up, you know, relying on neighbors and, you know, I still believe in it takes a village to raise like children, to own a business, to just live, you know? And so I feel like it was definitely an accidental thing, but I love it. I love, you know, hosting people in the studio and just, you know, people will come in and they're like, do you have a needle I could buy off of you? And I'm like, no, you could have it. What color thread, you know? And so I love, because we do get a lot of like fabric donations and, you know, supplies of like sewing supplies. Then for me, I'm like, who needs what? And how do I take care of you? You know? And so creating like more accessibility and like for people wanting to get into that realm of art.
Yeah. I when you think about what you just described and the role of art in building community, what do you think is the role of art? And you know, we're living in this time where we've got all this polarization and disconnection and epidemic of loneliness. And what is the role of art in undoing that?
I feel like art is definitely that feeling of giving yourself self-worth. Like we're all meant to create. We were all meant for that. And so when you do create, there's like a little thing that like happens in your heart that you're like, I did that. And you're so proud of it. And like, you want to share it and you want to, you know, show people like, look, I did this. And it was like my first time, or maybe it wasn't. And it's just like that really like powerful, like feeling. For me, like, I feel that like lately I've just kind of felt very, like, I guess overwhelmed and, you know, unmotivated with like, obviously like the climate of everything that's like happening and, you know, being a daughter of immigrants and, you know, just kind of feeling like really uninspired. But I also feel that art is resilience. And for me, like, you know, I had to slap myself out of it, you know, where I was like, no, you can't go into that dark path.
Completely understandable though, but
yes,
good. I'm glad you did. I'm glad you had that conversation.
And I feel like I was having that kind of like going down that path because, you know, it did feel like overwhelming and like unmotivated and all that. And then I was like, wait, I put so much cultural references into like my work. And how can I be like a great representation of like who we are as like people? And that's where I was like, I have to be like the resilience and keep going, you know? And I do feel that art is that. It is a form of connecting with people, but it's also a form of resilience.
I actually wanted to ask you about that anyway. So let's just touch on that for a moment. You know, you do include, and you showed it to us, references to Chicano and Mexican culture, and that narrative or storytelling is important as part of your work.
Yes.
Why, aside from the fact that it's the culture you come from, why is it important?
I feel like for a really long time, I've been on that path of trying to figure out where I come from. I know both my parents are from Guadalajara in Mexico, but before them, And so who are the people before them? Who are my ancestors? And so I've been on this path of trying to figure that out, right? And like understanding that like my grandmother was, indigenous to like Mexico and, all those kind of things. And so really trying to find out who I was. And I went down this rabbit hole of like, who am I? If I know who I am, I could figure out where I need to go. And it was so difficult to find documents, dating back to like my ancestors. And so for me, I was like, wow, there's like it was almost like we were erased, like we didn't exist, And so for me, I want to create works of art that like tell the stories of like someone that was here that, really documented the process of like who I am as like a Mexican American Chicana in like the States, and like really wanting to tell that story because some of us don't have the privilege of actually like looking back at like where our ancestors came from, and we have been erased. And so being able to have that and to tell the stories and to to be inspired, because I know my husband, he has his stories that he could look back, and he has his great grandmother's diary. And I was having a conversation with him and I told him, you come from such a beautiful lineage. You could see it, like if you could just tap
What's
into
his
that.
lineage?
He's Puerto Rican and Polish.
Okay, yeah.
And so I was telling him, I'm like, oh my God, if you could just tap into that.
Yeah.
It's such a, if you knew like, that, like just take that and then, just take that power and just, where you come from. And so for me, like I want for years and years and years, like later on for it to feel like someone down the line for them to be like, my great grandmother was a, and then they would take that and then they would convert it into something beautiful, but I do want to, I think those stories are important to tell.
Well, and it's, thank you for that, because I think it does, I would just simply like to affirm that your art is the response to the feeling of being attacked and of feeling dispirited and disempowered, because you're telling the other narrative through everything you're doing in your art. Is it hard? I'm curious, because you are both an artist and you're an entrepreneur, which means you're an artist, and as your dad apparently taught you, you're also a businesswoman.
Yes.
So, and I'm sure you're approached on both levels, and people want to learn from you because you're an artist, and others want to learn from you because you're a businesswoman.
Yes.
How do you manage those two sides of your brain?
I feel like there was like a point in my life where I was like just thinking about it as like a business owner, right? Where I was like, well, I'm a business owner, so I have to make money and take care of the bills and do all that kind of stuff and have like a successful business. But then a part of me was like, well, I want to play and I want to create and I want to do all this stuff, and the business stuff isn't that fun, but also understanding as a business owner and as a creative, I love creating things that I love, that I would wear. And so creating like this more of a niche where people are drawn to it because it's so different. And so I felt like that was one of those things where I just kind of like leaned into that. I was like, you know what, I'm going to show up like this, and we'll see what happens, and so it has been a little, I feel like a lot of people are kind of like, isn't that like a contradictory of like, as an artist, you just want to create, and you do, but you also have to be able to self-promote, and we want to be able to support the artists that are in our communities when they're living, and we don't want to have starving artists or struggling artists.
Is it hard in San Diego to be an
artist? I do
artist?
believe it is hard.
Harder than, say, LA or
I feel like it is difficult for the purpose of there's a lot of opportunities that maybe are being gatekept. And so when you do have like a strong foundation of people that are willing to share their resources, and for people to, obviously like say, hey, there's something like this happening down there, you should go and kind of check it out. Like when people are doing that, and when they are, creating opportunities for themselves, I do believe that it gives you hope to be an artist in San Diego.
It does. Okay.
It does.
That's, yeah. Well, I know that's one of the things we always think about here, that we want this to be a great community for artists.
Yes.
That's part of what makes for a great community.
Yes.
And tell us a little bit about the Our Sacred Planet project.
Oh my God, that was so much fun. So we've had that that vision for a really long time. We've been wanting to do that project for a really long time. And obviously as a small business, we were kind of in the space of like, if we did do this, how could we do it? Like we don't have the funds to be able to buy all the sewing machines or any of that kind of stuff.
Can you describe what it is exactly?
Yes. So Our Sacred Planet was basically a project. It was a grant that we received from the Science Fleet Center in Balboa Park, and it was actually funded by the Previs Foundation, which was awesome. And so we created a video and we were explaining it was art for planetary health, and so we really wanted to talk about basically textile waste and how that impacts our sacred planet. And so we wanted to host 12 free workshops where we taught people how to be sustainable within their own clothes. So we had a tie-dye party, we had a mend and repair, we had a how to hem your own pants. We had all kinds of really fun workshops. And we basically we bought 10 sewing machines. And so we had all these fun workshops and people loved it. Every workshop was completely booked, and we had such a good time that people are asking about it now. And they're like, are you going to have free workshops this year? And we're like, we're going to make it happen. I don't know how we're going to make it happen, but we're going to make it happen. So we're really excited about that because it has allowed for us to be able to give those resources out. And it's really important to, especially having a physical location, to hear what your surrounding members of the community want. And what they need. And so I'm always really like curious, like, why do you want to learn how to sew? And then they tell me and I'm like, okay, I'm hearing that a lot. We should create something based around those kind of things. And it's important to give the community what it needs, because I felt like that's really like helped us, fill those voids and help the communities that we're servicing.
You, there's this generosity about you that comes across as you're talking, and you host a podcast called Skills Pay Bills. And on that you profile other local creators and makers. And well, first of all, how do you find the time? But how do you think about that as part of your mission as an artist and as an entrepreneur?
Like I said, sometimes because I'm in that interesting realm of like being a textile artist, and people are like, you just sew, you're not an artist, and so I'm like, I am an artist.
You are definitely, you are 100% an artist.
And so I know so many people that, just by talking to them, they have this great story of how they are paying one bill with like their skill. It doesn't have to mean that they're paying all their bills, but they're paying one bill and they're entering like their entrepreneurship journey. And I want to hear about it. I'm curious. I want to know how we could elevate them and how their journey could maybe inspire someone else where they're not, their journey isn't so linear. And so I feel like sometimes we get so hard on ourselves where we're like, my journey has to look like this or else I'm not successful. And it's really empowering to hear everyone's journey and how they did it, and they share tips and tricks of like things that maybe didn't work for them and things that do work for them. And so I do think that it's important to get to meet local entrepreneurs, local artists, local just makers that are wanting to share their story. And I love sharing people's stories. I love hearing stories. I love using my platform to share what they have going on, and it's just a lot of fun, and I love chit-chatting with people. I don't know if you can tell, but yeah, it's a lot of fun.
I so appreciate it because, as you know, being a podcast host, that makes this easier.
Yeah.
But, well, so 2 quick questions before, because unfortunately the time has flown by and we've run out of time, but for people who are interested in sewing, or maybe if they've got a different medium, interested in making art, but they are just afraid of making the commitment or trying.
Yeah.
What's your advice?
I always say, whenever you're trying something new, you have to give yourself grace. It's never going to be perfect. We're not striving for perfection. We're striving for movement. We want to just move and create, and then perfection will come in time. But we can't strive for those things. We have to strive to want to get better and want to, develop the skills. But I always say, just start. Don't overthink it. Just play. And I feel like as adults, we don't have that anymore. We don't have that time where we're like, I'm just going to doodle. And then everyone's like, what was that?
No, it feels like the stakes are always all or nothing. You must be perfect. And right.
Exactly.
Yeah. So for you, for Sew Loka, and for what project or dream has you really excited now?
I am really excited. I'm going to be turning 40 next week.
I don't even want to. Never mind.
So I'm excited about that. And I'm actually I'm really excited about that. I love, my birthday. And I feel like it's a lot of fun because I'm grateful that I get to be older. Yeah. And I feel like sometimes we take that for granted.
We do sometimes.
And I'm definitely getting my hot packs ready and my ice packs for, my knees and shoulders and all that stuff, but I'm prepping. Yeah. But I am really excited for, the summer. I love the summer. I love hosting workshops in the summer. And like I said, we're really excited. We have this really fun project that we're working with. I have another designer friend. His name's Chris Carson. And we're going to be working on a slow fashion festival. We were very inspired by France. And they just did a slow fashion show as their fashion week. And we were so inspired by that. And so we want to create a festival, which is a slow fashion festival.
I love that.
Yeah, that we're going to basically have all kinds of different booths where maybe you got a tote bag that you want to rebrand, and maybe you don't want to have that logo on there anymore and you want to cover it up, or you want to, put some fun design on it. So we'll have different little, workshop areas where you could sew and where you could upcycle some things, and where you could meet other creatives that are doing similar things in that kind of realm. And so I'm really excited about that. We'll have a fashion show, and it's a beautiful space. We just toured it today. And so we're excited about that. And I'm just excited about what the future looks like. And, I'm very motivated and excited. And I'm like, I guess I should start taking vitamins now. And, but I'm grateful. I'm grateful every day that I get to do this for work. So
this has been such an uplifting conversation, I think you have a whole lot of future, God willing, and and a very exciting one. And I hope you'll keep in touch with us about the Slow Fashion Festival, and that's an exciting vision for San Diego too, I think. So this has been a delight to talk with you, and I really appreciate what you're doing.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
All right.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. That was so much fun.
Crystal, what did you think?
That was a thrilling interview. Can I just start with saying I am so appreciative of you being open and honest about where you were with crafts and things like that. I think you being curious modeled what we all should be doing when we listen to others.
Yeah, I figured there was no other way to be. I wasn't going to try and come off as an expert.
Sure.
And I really was curious. And actually having her samples here, examples of her work that she was sharing, and then hearing the stories behind those, the interview took care of itself from that point.
Absolutely.
She just is so alive with ideas and joy in the work she's doing, and it comes across. And well, thank you for that. But I think it was the natural way to approach that interview.
And the joy in her work that you just mentioned. I know right now, she's working with the football club, the Wave, with youth. Yeah. You can walk in when she has her workshops. So she's also everywhere right now. And I think it's just a matter of time till she's in Paris and New York and all the things,
It's entirely possible. I was really struck by the fact that she does encounter people who don't think that what she does is art. And yet, to me, it was just so obvious. This person is an artist to her core. The way she reinvents things, and the way in which they catch fire in people's imaginations. I actually had the opportunity after the interview to talk to a representative from San Diego FC about her work, and they couldn't say enough about how quickly it moved, and the impact that it had for their clientele. So that was pretty special.
Yeah. Well, and to your point earlier, whether it's the jacket or how she's rebuilding things, there is a joy and a vibrancy there that just I think we all want to be involved and connected to. The one time I went and met her, I fangirled. So that's why I was sad that I was out sick the day she was here in studio. But what I love is you two talked about her being a storyteller.
Mm.
And to rebuild from, reclaim denim and other things, she's really focused on that story, not just the imagery of it, but, what is the story behind it? What is the story here? And so what did you take away from her storytelling and her work?
I took so much, but, she talked about her dad and his work as a denim salesman, denim merchant, and how that sort of, that opened the door to her to textiles and to entrepreneurism. And it also became part of the medium for her art. And so that was fascinating. The way she told us the story of what it's like to be her in this moment. We talked a little bit about the broken state of our culture and our culture wars and the way she feels as a Chicana and a Latina who is encountering negative stereotypes and negative forces. And I actually really loved when she said, but I realized that, she actually just confessed at one point that she was tempted to give up. And then she said, but I realized that I am honoring my heritage through my art. So why would I stop? And I think that was just such a beautiful statement of defiance and hope at the same time. I found that really powerful. And again, another part of the way she tells stories.
Agreed. And that practice of hope, I think, also comes in the form of her identifying the big challenge that is denim and the amount of water that's required, which I found shocking, 1,800 gallons of water.
Right.
And so I also appreciate not only is she telling a story about, culture and family, but also about our environment, the use of things, how we toss them out. And so, would you say more about what you took away from that?
Well, that also was very powerful for me. The idea of slow fashion, I think I've read about before, and it has some appeal because it's an antidote to the over speedy culture and the waste oriented culture that dominates fashion today. Throwaway, basically. But her notion of taking the time to reinvent things, to learn a craft around them, to find the value of a piece of clothing, and then to find the art hidden inside of it. All of that was really powerful. I have to say, I love the idea of granny crafts. The idea of a new generation discovering things that, our parents or grandparents saw as normal because they were part of life when we actually recycled things and reused things and kept them. When we're sometimes it's so easy to become negative about how are we ever going to solve our sustainability challenges? How are we ever going to solve the problems we have? And then you meet somebody like Claudia who well, she's embodying a way of beginning to change that narrative.
Yeah. And I love that she called back to the days when people did get to take home ec classes. In fact, she got to be in them. So, all these celebration of past practices that are actually very soothing, like the fact that she said a sewing machine and sewing, that act slows down your heart rate. Even just listening to her talk about it, I was like, I feel calm now, right? But the other thing that really stood out in her love of what she does was also, I felt that there was appreciation for working people when she talked about the history of denim and it hiding the stains and all these things. And I think sometimes in culture, we've treated the working class or people who work as, it's a shame. If only we could get out of these things. And so I just felt like all around it was a validation of our life as humans who work and contribute,
There really was. And I particularly love that you tied that to the reality that doing this work slows people's heart rates and produces calm in the face of anxiety. We talk a lot here about healing through the arts or healing through nature, and maybe just having a more integrated view of the things we do and how we relate to each other does that for us too. So very powerful. I just lots to celebrate in that interview. So
yeah, I enjoyed it. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
Stop. Talk to me.